I wanted to start with the stadium fight because I think that was maybe one of the first cards that you and I were both on.
Yep.
Just talked to Jamal a little bit about it when I interviewed him, and I fought him on it. And I wanted to get your perspective of that night, just kind of how that went, from being in the locker room to Serb coming in and saying the fights were going to be off to then the short rounds, and kind of how that played into your head the whole time that you're, fighting for a championship that night.
Yeah, it was pretty wild night. I remember showing up to the venue um that day, and I remember like walking out into the stands like to see the stadium, and it was like, wow, is it hot? I think it was like 110 degrees that day.
Yep, it was the
And
hottest day of the year.
yeah, it was like, man, this is hot. And I remember we were in the, I guess, the dugouts or whatever for the locker room, or not the dugouts, but back in behind the stadium for the locker rooms. And I remember being back there and was like, I don't even think we need to warm up. Like, I think it's warm enough that we don't need to do anything like that. And I think you were we in the same locker room?
Yeah, was Jason Digin with you then?
Yeah, Dignan. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was one
yeah.
of my coaches. Yeah.
Yep. So I know him from training with Joe Godinez in St. Clair. So I remember that because Jason was in our
Oh,
same
okay.
locker room.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason was my head coach there for a while.
Okay.
Um he I mean pretty much since I started as a pro, Jason kind of right after my pro debut, Jason was there the night, and he asked me to come train with him, and I went and trained with him, and that's pretty much went from there.
Hmm.
And like I said, I'm still in touch with Jason. He's not really training anybody anymore. I think he just kind of took a break from it. But I mean, I still talk to him, and every now and then we do get some rolling and stuff in. But uh, yeah, that down there, man, that was hot,
Hmm.
and it was like a slip and slide in there. And then, like you said, they bumped all like the pros and like the amateur title fights and stuff. They moved all us up first. And I remember being like kind of pissed. I was like, man, I wanted to fight under the lights.
Hmm.
And by the time I ended up getting a fight, though, I was still, I mean, it still was dark out, and I was still able to fight under the lights. But I really didn't like the rounds being cut short because I was literally I was prepared to go 10 5-minute rounds if I had to that night. And during the fight, I felt like the longer the fight was going, the better I was doing,
Hmm.
the better I was fighting. So I felt like if it would have been a 5-minute, 5-round title fight, I felt like it could have been really good for me that night. But 3 4-minute rounds, man, it was different, definitely different. It was
Different.
hot,
Yeah.
but
Never again.
yeah,
I'll never do that again.
that was crazy. I mean, I remember Serb coming in being like, all the fights, if nobody wants to fight, they don't have to fight, but everything's being cut down a minute off a round. And I mean, even the beginner amateurs that were only fighting 2-minute rounds, and they got to fight 1-minute rounds. It's like, man,
Yeah, you really better come out swinging when you got 1 minute.
yeah. I mean, you better that'd be like a full-on sprint.
Yeah, really. Yeah, and they got to
So,
fight, after us. So it literally was a slip and slide. You couldn't keep the mat dry.
oh yeah, I remember just throwing kicks and stuff in your feet, like wanting to slip out from underneath you, and trying to like cage pressure somebody, and your feet were like slipping and shit. And it was wild. It was definitely different.
It was. It was fun though. It was an experience. I don't think I'll do an outdoor fight again. But it was good for when it
That would
was at the
that would have
time.
been a hometown one for you, right?
It was. I was working for the baseball team at the time. I set that whole thing up.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was working for the Barnstormers. I did their video production up in the booth, and I it was Doug at the time was the
Hmm.
promoter, and I was like, we could do an outdoor show here, and the people at the stadium were like, nobody's gonna come, watch They called it UFC. Nobody's gonna come watch UFC at the stadium. It's like they'll be here, they'll come. Of course, hottest day of the year, almost canceled, worst conditions possible, and it still sold, probably upwards of a
I
thousand
s-
tickets.
I sold big that night.
Yeah, I did
Because
over a
Lancaster
hundred.
for me, that's probably what 2.5 hours,
Yeah,
almost 3 hour drive for me, and I sold like 50 some, I think that night, 50 some tickets for. I mean, you figure coming from almost 3 hours away,
yeah,
that's
that's good.
not a bad sell. But yeah, guys like you and Zach Kelly. I remember he was on the card. I think he made his pro debut that night,
He
right?
did. He beat up John Mosley pretty bad.
Yeah, I remember he pretty much torched the dude that he was fighting.
Yeah.
Him and I guess you had Blaine Shutt, and I don't even know who else was all in it. All that
Yeah.
Travis
Lozano was
Kramer.
fighting with us at the time. Lozano was there. He fought.
Yeah, he was the main, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Yeah, we had like 6 guys on that card. It was a good night for us.
Yeah, yeah, because you won the or a lightweight championship that night.
No, I got
pounds?
choked unconscious that night.
Oh, I thought you won.
No,
I thought
no.
you won that night.
No, I got choked out cold.
Oh,
Yeah, shot one too many times right into Jamal's guillotine, and he put me to sleep with it.
so I lost that night too. So
Yeah,
I guess we
it's
got
what it
something
is.
in common.
It is, yeah. And then you went on a little tear after that, right?
Yeah, wasn't long after that. I won again in Ohio. I fought Bellator veteran, multi-time Bellator veteran Dustin Kemp in Ohio, and he had like 15 fights. I think I was on my 5th fight, and I ended up submitting him in 45 seconds, rocked him with a high kick early in the first round, and he went to shoot, and I caught him in a guillotine. But yeah, after him, then I ended up getting signed to Bellator, and that was actually the last time I seen Zach Kelly, because I was fighting Andrew Salas, which Zach fought before as an amateur. And him and I discussed, some things and stuff about that. And he, like I said, he'd seen him there that night. I lost that split in Bellator. And then I went on, after the Bellator win, I went on a bit of a tear there until recently here in November, where I lost it to Jesus, who's the number 1 ranked guy in the state of Pennsylvania right now.
Yeah, and wanted to ask you about Bellator. Fighting for Bellator has got to be pretty cool, right? And what's the experience like, going through the whole thing from weigh-ins to getting your pictures taken and doing the glamour shots and all those things?
Oh, it was pretty wild. I mean, it's like, it was cool because it was almost, it felt like you're here, you know what I mean? You finally made it to what you've been training for. I remember walking into the hotel where they were doing the weigh-ins and stuff, and I think my coach and Jason and them were already in there, and I called him on the phone. I was talking to him. I was like, where are you guys at? And he was like, down the hall to the left. And I was like, oh, never mind, I see Robbie Lawler, I'll just follow him. So I followed Robbie Lawler back in there because he was there to corner Logan Storley, I think. And so we went back and did the weigh-ins and all that stuff and the pictures. And then the night of the fight, I ended up I didn't get a hotel there. Even they still offered me one. But, the Bryce Jordan Center, man, is like 25, 30 minutes from my house. So I didn't get a hotel. I was like, nah, I don't need one. I probably should have just let the coaches or something stay in it. But I ended up going back to the venue and stuff, and we got into the venue, and then we're in the back, and next thing you know, Robbie Lawler comes in the locker room, Al Iaquinta comes in the locker room, Hoyce Gracie's there running around, Randy Couture's there. Hoyce actually come back right before I went out, because that was the second fight of the night. Hoyce came back to talk to me, because Jason was out front talking to him, and I think Jason was like, hey, I got one of my fighters on the card tonight. He's the second fight up. And Hoyce was like, oh, yeah, I'll come back and talk to him. And he come back, and he showed me this a thing on his phone. It was in Portuguese, and he read it and then explained it to me and stuff. And basically just come back to wish me luck and all that stuff. Stitched her in, wrapped my hands. It was like you were there, like you made it. You know what I mean? It was an awesome feeling.
Yeah, that's cool. And while you're there, were you like kind of taking it all in, or was it here and there and gone, like kind of like a blur and then it was over?
No, I was pretty much I was taking it all in, and I do that on every single fight. I just kind of live in the moment. And like the night we fought at the baseball stadium, I just remember walking down that long runway to the cage and just looking up and seeing the crowd and seeing the ring and just embracing it and taking it all in. Because really, I'm there to have fun, and that's why I do it. You know what I mean? And I'm just enjoying the process. I'm enjoying everything that's going on. And at that moment right there is when I'm like at peace with myself. You know what I mean? Right before I'm getting ready to step in the ring, like everything's just calm and peaceful to me. But the whole night at Bellator was just amazing, and like I'm glad like I finally got to put my name out there so they know who I am. And one of my ultimate goals when I started in this was to be able to fight at the Jordan Center,
Mm-hmm.
because there was never a fight ever at the Jordan Center. And I thought, man, my goal was to always fight at the Jordan Center. It was a hometown venue for me. It was a great opportunity. It's just something I always wanted to do, and then opportunity came, and turned out I was able to do it. So
Yeah, it's good. And, you being a hometown guy, I'm sure you had a lot of fans there and, sold a lot of tickets and had, a lot of support in the crowd as well.
oh, absolutely. I don't want to get into my thoughts on the whole decision. I definitely thought I won the fight.
I thought you won the fight too, but we don't have to go there. I watched it a few times.
I definitely thought I won the fight, and I feel like the whole arena thought I won the fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I probably sold 150 tickets that night, and I would have sold more if they had a weird ticket sell thing. At first, they told us that they wanted every fighter had to sell at least 75. And then they said, no, now there's not a limit on fighters. Now it was whatever you get, you have to sell. If you don't sell, you have to pay for it out of your purse. So if I ordered 100 tickets and only sold 50 of those tickets was going to come out of my purse.
Oh, no way.
And I never seen that or heard of that before. So that made me gun shy. I sold my first 50, and I was like, you know what? Everybody else just buy them online, and which kind of sucked for the people buying them because they were a little bit more expensive online. But when I have tickets in hand and I'm able to sell and I'm able to fight here hometown, I'm like 200 plus tickets. Last time I fought in Altoona, I think I sold like 205.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the most amazing for the small town that I live in. I mean, I live in a town that doesn't even have a stoplight, and I got the most amazing support and fan base and people that want to travel to see it. It's unreal, and I can't thank them enough for it.
It's cool that you're talking about that. I mean, I'm from the same kind of, small town. There's no yellow line on the road. There's no stoplights. There's nothing like that.
Yep.
And when I was fighting, even coming up as an amateur, I was living in Lancaster at the time, where I'm at now, but I was, I'm from a small town on the border of Dauphin and Schuylkill County, old coal region town.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be at the gun club streaming the fights online like it was a UFC fight, packing the local gun clubs and the American Legions and stuff like that. And I never expected any of that, like any of that kind of support. I did it because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But then I got to a certain point where I was like, this is almost another, motivating factor, another reason for me to fight altogether is because these people support me. They, love watching me fight. I think that small town vibe is something that not a lot of people get to experience when you have that kind of support.
Yeah, and it's definitely true. Like I said, I mean, I'm from the same type of area as you are. I think the town I live in, the population might be 500 people at the most, but all the neighboring towns, ones that are 20, 30 minutes away, Mount Union, Southern Huntington, place Altoona, stuff like that. Everybody that just comes in and wants to see it, you know what I mean? And then with me as an amateur, I had to travel to fight, and I was always a fight anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere kind of guy. And I fought in Pittsburgh a lot. And, man, I ended up getting one of the best fan bases an outsider could ever have in Pittsburgh. And anytime, as long as I'm not fighting a hometown guy in Pittsburgh, they're like, even all the guys there from the other gyms and stuff, they're all cheering and supporting me. You know what I mean? It's amazing that people can back local fighters like that.
Yeah. How far are you from Huntington?
I am about 10 minutes from Huntington.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I've been going up there to Lake Racetown since I was probably 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I spent a lot of time on Lake Racetown.
Yeah, my grandparents have a cabin up there. My dad and I go striper fishing all the time when we're up there.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah. I've been out to Racetown a few times, a lot of times.
I was just up there last weekend riding mountain bike.
What's that?
I said I was just up there last weekend riding mountain bike.
Oh, no shit. Anytime you're up this way, man, hit me up.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I'll be up there.
Right now it's kind of shitty. I'd say we go grab a beer or something somewhere. But
can't do a whole lot now. But no, I'll be up there. my wife and I plan on spending a decent amount of time up there in August. Our daughter will be probably 2-ish months old, and we both got some time off from work, so we're gonna be up at the cabin and going out boating. Hopefully the bars are back open. I'll meet you for a beer. Maybe we can get a training session or two in.
Yeah, dude, I'm all for it.
Awesome. I also want to ask you about that my MMA news article that just came out. Those local fights that they want to see made, because you were up there with some pretty. Those two other fights are really stacked and really exciting. What would you say about putting that fight together? I know you signed it once, and I think it fell through.
Yeah, well, it was the Corona thing
Is
killed
that
it.
what
We were
happened?
supposed
Okay.
to fight April 11th, yeah. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I had a choice of a first fight that I want to run back, it would probably be that one. That was a fight we've been gunning for the past couple of years, and Chris is kind of hard to get to sign the dotted line, I suppose. We were agreed to fight before, and he wanted to take other fights beforehand, which you know how it is in this game. You can't do that stuff. Or,
Yep.
I mean, I can't bank on that. I should say he can do whatever he
He can
wants,
do
but
whatever
I
he wants.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait and bank on it. So I ended up having to take other fights and stuff. And then we were trying to book in Pittsburgh before, and he turned us down for out there. And Paul made it happen for what was going to happen there in Chambersburg. And I was excited. I was ready. Chris is a tough guy. He's got power in his hands. He's fought a lot of tough guys. And he's tough to finish. So to me, it was like, this is a great fight. Great. I like the matchup. Great matchup. Tough kid. Somebody that if I do beat him, it looks good on my resume. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much what I go after. I mean, the last kid I fought was number 1 ranked kid in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not afraid to take in and step the game up and take these fights. And I've been in it long enough now. I mean, I'm going on like my 10th year. It's like, these are the fights I'm ready for. These are the fights I want. You know what I mean? There's another guy in Pittsburgh that he's actually signed to Bellator. But if something ever comes up that he's not released from Bellator or whatever, I told him in Pittsburgh I'd fight him in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what it's like, man. You fought some tough dudes in your day.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
beat,
my pro debut, when I fought Will Dill, it was on 7 days notice, 6 days notice. I fought more short notice fights than I have prepared for the guy.
exactly. I mean, I fought as an amateur. I fought twice in 10 days, which isn't even technically legal.
I was gonna say you can't do that.
Serb let it go for some reason. I fought in Altoona on November 16th and won by submission in the second round, and then an hour later agreed to fight on the 26th, the day before Thanksgiving, in Pittsburgh for the title out there, and Serb let it go, and I went out there, and that was me and Richie Cantalina. We put on a war that night. We ended up getting fight of the year for it. And you know what I mean? That's just, and then the next fight after that, I fought the number 1 ranked kid in the nation, and Jarrell Hodge in Ohio, in his hometown. Like, man, you can't be afraid to go into hostile territory, and you can't be afraid to fight anybody. So,
no, that's a funny, not funny, I should say, but the dynamic of training and then fighting close to home, Altoona, Pittsburgh, what have you, where it's not that far for your fans to drive, and then going into somebody else's hometown, hostile environment, their fans are all over you. Maybe you're in the main event, co-main event, championship, whatever it is. Which I don't want to say which do you prefer, because obviously I prefer fighting in front of my fans. Sounds like you do too. But
yeah.
how do you treat that mentally going into hostile environment? Do you do anything differently? Do you prepare differently for that mentally?
I can't say mentally I do it. To me, it's a fight. You know what I mean? And it's just, we're gonna fight anywhere. It ain't gonna be no different that if you or I get signed to the UFC, we're not gonna fight at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're gonna be going to Vegas or wherever the fights are at.
Or the middle of Oklahoma.
But yeah. But what I do is I feed into it a lot. Like I'll feed into the fans a lot. We when I fought Kemp in Ohio, I had them announce that I was coming from Happy Valley, Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State. You know what I mean? Get the fans, and man, did they boo me! Like when I come out, they announced that, they freaking booed me, and I just grinned ear to ear. And like I said, I finished that fight in the first 45 seconds. And then when it was done and I was on the mic on the post fight, I just said, I was like, I know you guys don't like me too much, but you're all right in my book. and then you get some cheers out of them. And then when you come out of getting dressed and stuff, everyone's like, yeah, man, it's a good fight. It wasn't bad. So, but me and a funny story about how Jason and I really got to training together was Jason had Cody Carlheim. I don't know if you've heard of him. Mm-hmm. Cody was, that was Jason and that was their main guy, and he was coming up as an amateur. Cody was tough, and he was plagued with injuries. But Cody and I met on 5 days' notice. I was supposed to fight for a title, amateur title in Johnstown, and the kid backed out the week of the fight, and Cody stepped up on short notice, and we bumped up in weight. Instead of fighting at 45, we fought at 55 for the lightweight title that night. And Cody and I, had a hell of a fight, and I ended up winning the decision that night. And to this day, Cody and I are best friends, and we're training partners. So
that's awesome.
Jason wanted us to start working together. A couple years, a year or two later, we started training together, and Cody's one of my main guys. Him and he comes down the other weekend when we had fights here, at the house. He comes down to my house, comes down to the parties and stuff we might have here, fight nights or whatever. And we get a lot of work in with each other. And he's just been one of my main guys.
It's funny how the sport works like that. I think there's a misconception from the general public that, we as fighters are just kind of, Neanderthals beating the hell out of each other and don't like each other. And it's much larger than that. I think even if we don't like someone on a personal level, we all kind of have that mutual respect of, okay, you've gotten in there, you've fought, you've paid your dues. And at the end of the day, you can, shake hands, pat each other on the back, and go your separate ways. Or become friends like you have with him, or I have with Jamal and a couple guys that I fought.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much it, when it comes down to it. It's just about it's a sport. You know what I mean? It's just about the sport. We're athletes. We're not murderers or anything like that. We're athletes, and we go in there to perform at our best level. And who wins? Someone wins and someone loses. That's just part of the game. When it's all said and done, you shake hands, sometimes drink a beer together, and go your separate ways. Maybe meet again later down the road.
It's I think it goes a long way for people to see how much training actually goes into this too. I think there's a decent amount of people who just see MMA as, okay, you just rolled out of bed today and, you got in a fight in the cage at night, and don't see the hours upon hours upon hours that we put in the gym just for a 15 or 25-minute fight. It's literally 10 to 20 times the amount of time that you put in hours to minutes.
You figure for just one fight, you probably do 500 rounds of sparring, which is fights itself. You know what I mean? And when you've been doing it for as long as you have, or as long as I have, you got tens of thousands of rounds of sparring, which is fights itself. And when I first started as an amateur, that was all we did. My very first day I walked in the gym, I had to spar. I had to spar the kid that was ranked #1 in the nation as an amateur that was making his pro debut at the time. And that was who I worked with. We just sparred and sparred and sparred. And I took ass whooping after ass whooping for months until finally one day you start giving it back. And it's like, there's a ton of time and a ton of lost, family nights or friend nights, or things that you could be doing with your buddies or your family or anything like that. There's a lot of stuff you got to put on the back burner, especially at the pro level. Because when you take a fight at the pro level, you have to take it serious. You gotta put your time in. You got to train for it. And if you don't do that, you're going to get hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a joke.
That sucks.
Yeah, you're not just going to go out there and have a bad night and be like, oh, well, I lost, on points, and, they scored more points than me. No, you're going to get beat up, and it's going to hurt.
Yeah, and people like me, I rely on my body for work. I work more of a labor job, you know what I mean? So one time I blew my knee out on a Monday night at practice. This was a couple years ago. I dislocated my knee, And the next day I had to be at work. You know what I mean? So I'm out there hobbling around on one leg, still doing what I can do. Taking it easy, but doing what I can do. So, yeah, like I said, it's mile after mile. I put 100,000 miles on in that cage.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way though. I mean, some of my fondest memories of training were getting ready for my first amateur fight, and our coach just had me doing get up drill, get up drill, get up drill, get up drill against the cage. And I was getting beat so bad, I got in my car on the way home and I just, started crying and beating the shit out of my steering wheel because I was so frustrated. But to this day, it's not very easy to hold me down, regardless of who you are. I'm going to get up off that cage. And it's things like that that are like, it takes a certain kind of mentality to go through those things to actually improve. Because you could go through the motions all day, but to
Oh
really
yeah.
test yourself and improve and get better, you've got to take those lumps. You've got to get the shit kicked out of you.
And I think that's why wrestlers are just so tough.
Yep.
In the MMA world is because, I mean, you especially look at these higher level high school kids and stuff coming up through. Them kids freaking grind. And I mean, they grind. And you've been in this game like I've been in this game, and wrestling is the hardest part. If you've never done it before, if you've never had that mentality, or like, because I was fortunate enough, I wrestled all the way through, elementary school through high school. But if you didn't have that grinding mentality and just grit that like a wrestler has, I mean, that's a tough fight for anybody that doesn't have that mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I didn't wrestle. I had to learn all of the wrestling that I've learned since, I've been 21, 22 years old. I wrestled up until third grade, thought it was a good idea to play basketball with my friends, and then haven't gotten taller since. So basketball wasn't the best idea for me. But, I had to, not that I didn't have that mentality going in, but I mean, those wrestlers, like you said, there's no quit in them. They'll just go and go and go.
It's the hardest part to learn too. You know what I mean? It's one of them things that just takes experience to get better at it. Like I've seen guys pick up jits, quick, but they can't wrestle for shit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And the problem is a lot of times is people rely on, you know what I mean? If they're going to face a wrestler, they'll rely on their jits. But if you got a wrestler that's got good jits, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? A lot of guys want to play off they'll be, I'll just pull guard and I'll play off my back. And it's like, no, man, you're on the ground, you're getting beat. If you're on bottom, you're getting beat. Like,
you could throw up submission after submission.
9 times out of 10, the judge sees you losing the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and even building off of that, I mean, wrestling is one thing, but wrestling at the high school or collegiate level, there's no cage. So learning how to wrestle on the cage, drag someone to the mat, or get up off the cage, turn the corner, tie plumb someone, turn them off, that in itself is a whole game that I think goes unnoticed by a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm fortunate enough that I train pretty much on a daily basis with the PIAA 130-pound state champ this year, Caden Cassidy from Bedford. His dad is actually my striking coach, Darren Cassidy. Darren was a phenomenal kickboxer in his day, the early 2000s and stuff. But he makes Caden come in, and Caden trains kickboxing with us and stuff like that too. You know what I mean? But he makes us wrestle. And Caden and I have this little joke going on about who could beat who and all this stuff. And we'll wrestle. One day we'll wrestle Greco matches, and the next day we'll do freestyle, and the next day we'll do folk style. But he's a tough kid. You know what I mean? A phenomenal wrestler. He went 35-0 this year with, I forget what he had, 28 or 29 tech falls, and then won the state championship. I mean, the kid's a stud.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I'm fortunate enough to train with him on a daily basis.
Is almost unheard of. I mean, to do that in somewhere like a Tennessee or North Carolina, wrestling's different here.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So, Caden probably is someone who I hope doesn't go pro before I retire. Sounds like I don't want to fight him.
He's got a full ride to George Mason Division I college.
Oh, so good for him. So I got plenty of time.
Yeah, he's going to be next 4 years. He's going to be wrestling for them. And
okay, good.
I know they want to try to get him in the ring before he leaves for college. Well, they was originally planning on, but I don't know if it's going to happen now because of this COVID shit. But I imagine they'll try to get him in the ring as an amateur here at some point. And he wants to fight too. Like I said, he's been sparring with us and stuff. But I like going jits with him, so I'll just choke him out like every 3 seconds. I'll catch him with something.
That's good. Yeah, those wrestlers, they dive into guillotines freely.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens.
So, we talked a little bit about your plan was to get that fight in April, kind of started these quarantines, these lockdowns, things like that. Once you can fight again, what's your goal going, through 2020 into 2021? Big picture, what are you looking to accomplish over the next year and a half, 2 years?
I want to win a pro championship.
Okay.
I held 2 amateur championships at 2 different weight classes. Right now, as I stand now, I've fought twice for 2 pro titles, fallen short in both fights. And I did the same thing as an amateur. It took me the 3rd time to finally win a title. So hopefully the same thing goes as a pro. But, I'm coming off that loss, and, I got to bounce back. I need to get a win or 2 before I can, even think about fighting for a title. But I want to win a pro championship. I want to be able to say that I'm a professional athlete and I'm a professional world champion. Because 99% of people can't even say they're a pro athlete.
Yep.
And less than 1% of that can even say that they've won a world championship. So that's the next goal. But obviously, ultimately, Bellator again, UFC, whatever. You know what I mean? One. Any of them promotions, you know what I mean, to sign and fight with them would be another goal.
Awesome. Well, we got your back here. We'll support you here. I hope to come out there and train with you sometime soon. I'll be out there, like I said, in probably most of the month of August. So I'll bring my gear. I'll sneak away for a few hours. We'll get some training in.
Yeah, dude, we can do that. Like I said, you guys are still Gracie 717? Is that where you're all at?
Yep.
So is Zach and them still there? Is he still training?
Zach is not. No, Zach stepped away, spend more time with his family and spend time, with his now fiance. Just bought a house, bought a new truck. So, regular life things.
Last time I talked to him, he told me he was getting burnt out. He's been doing it for a long time. And like I said, we didn't really know each other other than just chatting on Facebook and stuff, but he was always a really cool dude. Every time I, seen him in person or whatever, we always, because he fought some of the guys I fought and I fought some of the guys he fought. And, I always said, the guys that come out of your gym, everybody always seemed pretty cool, like pretty good people. And I've always gotten along with everyone. And we always talked about either me coming down to train or, linking up at some point. So, yeah, we'll have to make it happen sometime.
Yeah, come on down. And, like I was saying before, I train, cross-train over at Algio's, and we got a pretty good group of guys, all our size, that are going in there. My main training partner is Christian Carr, and he pretty much beats me up on a daily basis. Yeah, so that's fun. But he challenges me in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, striking, all those things that, he doesn't get tired. I don't get tired. So we end up just going round and round.
Competitive goes.
It's how it is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll set something up.
Did you guys have one of your coaches? Was he a chiropractor or something?
Randy, yeah, white hair, older guy.
Dude. Yeah, I remember him. I was in the back, and then we was in the back room, and he was like, "You want me to give you adjustment?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I want an adjustment." I remember him giving me a full adjustment before I went out to fight. I never knew the guy's name, really never got to catch his name, but I was like, "Man, that guy's awesome."
Yeah, he's one of the best mitt holders. I love Randy.
Yeah.
He funny story.
Cool-ass dude.
Before I let you go, funny story about Randy. The first time I ever met him, I didn't really know him, and I was backstage at a fight. I mean, I knew him to see him at the gym, but that's about it. And he's like, "Hey, you got a wristband?" I'm like, "No, I don't got one. I got to go back out. They're not going to let me back here." And it was at the Sands, and at the Sands, they're strict with those wristbands. They got the girl in the front, and you cannot come in. So Randy opens up this tackle box, right? And he's got every color wristband you could possibly imagine. He's like, "What color are they tonight?" So,
Shit, that's awesome.
so that's the first time that I ever really interacted with Randy was at I think it was like an XFE fight at the Sands, and ever since then, he's been adjusting me, holding mitts for me, comes to my 6 a.m. jiu-jitsu classes. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Dude's a savage.
Is he? I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, he's a black belt under Team Balance. Been training for a really long time. Um, he's an all-around good dude. If you're ever in the Hershey area, Renaissance Chiropractic is his chiropractic office. He'll hook you
Oh,
up.
yeah, I'll check him out. I know. I really appreciated doing he snap, crackle, and pop me that night. Man, that felt great.
Yeah,
So.
he used to bring his table to the gym, and he would adjust us in the parking lot.
That's some ghetto shit, but that's awesome.
It was great. Yeah, best way to get tuned up right before a training session.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll let you go. It was a real pleasure hanging out, talking to you for a little bit, getting to shoot the shit. When I'm out in the Raystown area, bring my mountain bike, and I'll also bring my gear, and we'll get some rounds in, and then we'll get a beer afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome,
Absolutely.
man.
We can set something up.
Perfect. Stay safe. Stay in shape, and I'll be in touch. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, all right. See you, buddy. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you soon.